I'm not going to speak on Iranians because I'm not Iranian, but I am part of the Free Palestine crowd. So I will tell you why I personally don't align with the mainstream Free Iran Woman Life Freedom movement, and that's because it is rooted in Islamophobic, pro-colonial regime change that doesn't actually serve the interests of the Iranian people. Let me put it on the record that just because I'm Muslim doesn't mean that I support the Islamic regime of Iran. Do I like that they're one of the few governments in the world that—
How dire the situation is. Women in Iran are being killed for not covering their hair. The men of Iran are being killed for standing up for the women. Just yesterday,
beaten and insulted by the supervisor of the school just because of not covering all my hair under my scarf, and also laughing loudly in the yard of the school. And later in high school, I witnessed one of my classmates. She was dragged out of the class just because of doing her eyebrow. The supervisor of the school came to the class and dragged her out of the class, called her a whore because she was not allowed to touch her face before her marriage. So these are just two examples. There are many other stories and examples that I shared in both my books, Captive in Iran and A Love Journey with God, to explain how is the life of women living under the rules of radical Muslims and the Islamic Republic regime. And women systematically in Iran are getting suppressed, assaulted, and being abused.
Here are some eye-opening stories straight from the voices of brave women who have lived through the nightmare of the Islamist regime in Iran. It's heartbreaking to hear what these ladies have endured, and honestly it makes anyone's blood boil thinking about how women are treated like second-class citizens, or worse, under this oppressive system. These aren't just random tales, they're real accounts that shine a light on the daily terror. By the time you hear this, you'll have no choice but to fully believe every word because the patterns are too consistent to ignore. Let's break it down, starting with this viral Instagram reel that's blowing up for all the right reasons.
I'm not going to speak on Iranians because I'm not Iranian, but I am part of the Free Palestine crowd. So I will tell you why I personally don't align with the mainstream Free Iran Woman Life Freedom movement, and that's because it is rooted in Islamophobic, pro-colonial regime change that doesn't actually serve the interests of the Iranian people. Let me put it on the record that just because I'm Muslim doesn't mean that I support the Islamic regime of Iran. Do I like that they're one of the few governments in the world that does have the backbone to stand up to Israel and America? Yes. Does that mean that I support their oppressive policies, forcing women to wear hijab, sending morality police to beat up those who don't? Absolutely not. Yes, hijab is obligatory in Islam, but not by the force of random men in power. Committing murder is a bigger sin than not wearing hijab, and the Iranian regime have done that, so I'm not going to stand here and say that I support everything they do just because I'm a hijabi Muslim.
This young Muslim woman has seen a lot of unfair treatment, and here she accidentally lets the cat out of the bag about the regime's dark side. The lady is corroborating what we've heard for years. Islamist enforcers in Iran force women to cover up, and if they don't, it's beatings, arrests, or even death. In her rush to defend the regime's anti-Western stance and support for Palestine, she exposes the hypocrisy. I mean, how can you praise a government that kills its own women for showing a strand of hair?
Understanding that Iranians, regardless of where they sit on the political spectrum, should democratically elect their leaders and have the power to choose their representatives, not Israel, not America, not us. But truthfully, this whole thing goes well beyond just, I want the freedom to show my legs and not wear hijab. You don't even have to go that far back in history to know that any regime change that involves America is never in the best interest of your people. How do you truly believe that installing a Zionist puppet Shah is going to benefit you in any way when they're the very same people that crippled your economy in the first place by placing you under decades of sanctions so that your economy could plunder? Please look at your neighbours in Afghanistan and then tell me that American intervention will work out in your best interests. You're literally liking Islamophobic Hasbara propaganda comments about all we know is hating Jews, which just further proves my point that
she's trying to walk a fine line, saying she's against the internal oppression but okay with their foreign fights. But come on, that's like saying you're cool with a bully as long as they're punching someone else. This just proves the regime's control is all about power over women, rooted in that 1979 revolution when radicals hijacked the country and turned it into a theocracy.
collective movement doesn't align with actual liberation, but the watered-down Western version of it. But then also liking comments about the hate group is an oppressive regime. Girl, they're orphans fighting for their right to live on their indigenous land. The fact you see them as dangerous for fighting for their freedoms but can justify it when Iranians are trying to do the same tells me everything I need to know about you. Iran is a Muslim country, and like most Muslim countries, they are not secular. In fact, they use religion to govern their countries via the Sharia. No, you shouldn't force women to wear hijab or kill them over it, but it's common sense that you can't dress skimpy.
Women like her are speaking out, even if unintentionally, and we need to amplify that. It's brave, and it humanizes the struggle against forced veiling that's led to protests like the ones after Mahsa Amini's murder in 2022.
Women like freedom, but when France and Switzerland and Sweden want to pass laws that ban women from wearing niqab or hijab, which essentially strips women of their choice to cover up, it's cricket. So I guess by this logic, we have to overthrow their governments and install puppet leaders because women still do not have certain freedoms. If I'm going to be really honest, a lot of this is just stemmed in the Western feminist idea of tying liberation and freedom to wanting to walk out naked. No thought on how America or Israel just want to use you for their own regional interests. But it's fine, you can steal our resources and put a lapdog in power to control us, but at least I can go out showing my legs.
As if that slip-up wasn't chilling enough, let's talk about Sarah Raviani, another survivor with a more ghastly experience. This incredible Iranian-American activist who's out here fighting for her people's freedom.
I would also like to introduce our next speaker, someone that is very dear to me, Sarah Raviani. Sarah is an Iranian-American activist. She first became vocal after the killing of Mahsa Amini by the Iranian morality police, and is shaped by her family's experience fleeing Iran after the 1979 revolution. Knowing firsthand the terror the regime has brought upon the Iranian people has been a catalyst for her opposition to the Islamic regime. Sarah, I'm giving the stage to you. It's so nice to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
So nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really important conversation, and it's one that's very near and dear to my heart. I believe oftentimes human rights become an afterthought in a lot of these conversations, but what people fail to realize is the people of the Middle East just want peace. They just want to live.
In her conversation at this Silent No More forum, she gets real about the disconnect between the Iranian regime and its citizens. She's spot on when she says the government doesn't represent the people. It's like an occupying force crushing dreams. Hearing her describe women being killed for defying hijab rules or men executed for standing up is really heartbreaking my heart.
Alike, and especially this young generation that is growing up not only in Iran, but I see it in Iraq, in Syria, in Israel. Everyone just wants to have a peaceful future. And this is something that I believe that the Western world does not understand. The Western world believes that the Middle East is basically a different planet. And I think that that's a huge disservice. The women of Iran are no different than me. The only difference is that I was born in the United States and they were born in Iran. I talk to so many young women day in and day out inside of Iran, and they tell me, Sarah, we're living in hell. And I don't think people understand just how dire the situation is. Women in Iran are being killed for not covering their hair. The men of Iran are being killed for standing up for the women.
This isn't ancient history, it's happening now, tied to the same Islamist mindset that enforces gender apartheid. This experience adds context to the bigger picture. Iran's been under this regime for over 40 years, exporting terror while oppressing at home. At this point, you're free to judge the international community harshly, because they talk big about human rights but often look the other way.
Yesterday, a U.S. national, Jimmy Shahmad, was killed by the Islamic regime in Iran. And it's so tragic because this pain is so far-reaching. His daughter advocated for years for her father's return, and instead of listening, it fell on deaf ears, and it could have been avoided. There was a hostage deal that took place in 2023, and the only hostage in Iran with its looming death sentence over his head was killed and left behind by our administration. Our government left him behind. And this is something that is so hypocritical when people claim to care about women's rights and human rights and human lives, and they leave Americans behind to die. And this affects all of us. This affects everyone. And I want people.
We owe it to women like this to listen and support, because her call for solidarity across borders, even with places like Israel facing similar threats, shows true courage.
That the people of Iran are so different than the regime. Like I said earlier, human rights oftentimes become an afterthought, but we don't drive home the point enough that the Iranian people are not the regime that occupies them. And in fact, they are so different. Like I just said, the youth of Iran are exactly like me. There's no difference between me and those kids that are living inside of Iran. All they want is a future of freedom and peace. They don't want to be a part of the regime's war of terror across the entire Middle East. They want to grow up and live good lives, but they have no futures because of what this regime has done. And that's the biggest tragedy. And I think that if you claim to care about human rights and women's rights, then it starts with also caring about the people of the Middle East and understanding that they want peace and prosperity just like the rest of us.
But if you thought that was bad, wait till you hear this gut-wrenching testimony from Marzia Amirzadeh, a survivor who's been through hell and back.
In high school, I witnessed one of my classmates. She was dragged out of the class just because of doing her eyebrow. The supervisor of the school came to the class and dragged her out of the class, called her a whore because she was not allowed to touch her face before her marriage. So these are just two examples. There are many other stories and examples that I shared in both my books, Captive in Iran and A Love Journey with God, to explain how is the life of women living under the rules of radical Muslims and the Islamic Republic regime. And women systematically in Iran are getting suppressed, assaulted, and being abused sexually and in different areas of the society, at schools. And later I was witness firsthand in prison, hearing many shocking stories what happened to women. And it was in 2009 that I myself with my friend, we were arrested just because of believing in Jesus, being a Christian. We were in prison for almost 9 months. We were sentenced to death by hanging. And I myself witnessed firsthand the violence against women and how they were being tortured, beaten. And the first 14 days of my arrest, I was imprisoned in a small jail, which is underground dungeon. And it's the same jail, the same place that Mahsa Amini in 2022 were beaten.
Born right before the 1979 revolution, Marzia shares her life story in the same forum, and it's brutal. She talks about being beaten at school as a little girl, just 7 years old, for her hijab slipping or laughing too much. Can you imagine? But it gets darker.
Brutally because of not having a proper Islamic hijab, which led to her death. And the regime murdered her simply because of not having a proper Islamic hijab. And I was in that same place in 2009. And I was witnessed how many women are getting arrested simply because of, by morality police in the streets, just because of not following the Islamic rules, not having a proper Islamic hijab. Wearing, colorful clothes, having nail polish, crazy reasons. And also I heard tons of stories later in the public, another prison, Evin prison, which they transferred me to that prison after being 14 days in that horrible jail, that it was honestly, I can't describe what.
Arrested in 2009 for converting to Christianity, Sarah spent 9 months in Evin prison, that infamous dungeon where so many innocents rot. She describes the torture, forced nudity, endless sit-ups to break spirits, and the worst, systematic rape by guards.
Was that I shared a little bit in both my books, in my interviews, that it was like underground dungeon, just small, very small cells that they would lock women and beaten them up, tortured them, and they humiliated them. For example, they forced us to being naked right in front of their eyes a few times in different prisons, and pushing us, forcing us to do sit up many times, and just to humiliate us as women. And in Evin prison again, when I was there, I witnessed the rape, sexual violence against my cellmates. For example, they locked me for 40 days in 209 solitary cells, and I was with another girl. She was only 18 years old, and every time she would go for interrogation, she would come back in tears and shaking and too much fear because of being abused sexually. And she shared with me that her interrogator abused her verbally and by his behavior, and she had the fear of being raped in one of those interrogations, which every time I had to pray for her when she was when they were taking her for interrogation. And another story I can share, the story of Rayhane Jabbari, which is a prominent story all around the world. And there's a film about it, 7 Winters in Tehran. And Rayhane Jabbari, I met in person. She was a beautiful girl that was arrested at the age of 19. She was in prison for 7 years, and she was tortured, sexually abused for many years, and her crime was.
And get this, the regime's fatwa that says virgins can't go to paradise, so they rape women before hanging them. It's monstrous, straight out of a horror story, but it's real, linked to the morality police who patrol streets enforcing these insane rules. No biking, no singing, acid attacks for defiance. Marzia lays it all out, and you can't help but believe her 100% because it's backed by reports from groups like Amnesty International.
Self-defense against her rapist, who was a part of the security intelligence in the government. And finally, after 7 years, they brutally executed her. Another story is one of my cellmates. She was in the public world. She shared with me she was working. She wanted to get a job in prison because she was poor. She didn't have anyone to support her. And finally, she was able to get a job in the clinic in prison. And after that, a few days after that, I could see how she was getting depressed. And I went to her and I asked her, what's going on? You always wanted to get a job to support yourself. And she was all the time, she was crying in secret, and she shared with me a shocking story. And she said, Marzi, my job in that clinic is giving sex to IRGC commanders. And
this regime isn't Islamic in any true sense. It's a twisted cult using religion to control and abuse. Marzia's books, like Captive in Iran, are must-reads for context on how the revolution stole freedoms overnight. She's a hero for speaking up, urging the world to help protesters who get blinded or killed for fighting back. We can't possibly ignore this. Women are dying for basic rights, and it's on all of us to stand with them.
Officials who are coming to prison to have meeting. And I was shocked to hear that. And she said she talked to prison authority and told her that she doesn't want to go back to the clinic, but they threatened her life and told her, if you resist and going back to clinic and sleeping there, if you share this with anyone, you will lose your life. And usually they target women like her that have nobody outside prison. They are poor, they don't have family member, and use them as sexual sex slave for their authorities. I was lucky because my friend and I, because our case got international attention and many people started advocating for us. That's why they didn't rape us, praise God, or sexually abuse.
These stories tie together a tragic truth. Iran's Islamists are waging war on their own women, and brave voices are finally cracking the facade. It's not about hating a faith but calling out abuse. Let's keep sharing these, support the resistance, and push for real change.
In that level that other prisoners shared with me. Another girl that I talked to her, she shared her story that for months she was another jail, and she shared that how they tortured her, and she lifted up her pants and showed me the mark of the cable all over her body, and she shared with me that many times they raped her in that jail before transferring to Evin.
What do you think about these heartbreaking stories? Hit the comments below and stay informed.